I remember that night vividly. A few months ago, I decided to take a night off from the emergency room. I was 20 years into my nursing career, and I needed this. My friends and I gathered in a sleek downtown apartment, the skyline lit up like a dream. It was supposed to be a night of laughter and joy. Little did I know what awaited me. Around 11:30, I stepped out for some fresh air. The cold bit through my thin dress, and that's when I saw it. A figure stood under a flickering streetlight across the street. It didn't move, didn't speak. I blinked, thinking it was just my tired eyes. I brushed it off and went back inside, shaking off the chill. The countdown to midnight began. My friends cheered, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the air. I could feel the excitement enveloping us. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You look beautiful tonight." It felt off. I looked around, but my friends were too busy having fun to notice my discomfort. Midnight struck, and we shouted with glee. But something nagged at me. I felt eyes on me. I glanced out the window. The figure was still there, just standing in the shadows. My pulse quickened. I told myself it was all in my head. Then another text popped up. "You're having so much fun." Their words made my skin crawl. I looked around again, searching for someone who might be playing a prank. No one seemed to notice. I was surrounded by friends. But at that moment, I felt alone. I stepped outside again, needing to clear my mind. The figure had not moved. I could barely see it, but I felt its eyes boring into me. I wanted to shout out, ask if they needed help. But fear gripped me. I didn't want to engage with whatever this was. I went back inside and tried to enjoy the party. Yet, new messages kept coming. "I see you. You're not as safe as you think." Each message sent ice through my veins. I wanted to laugh it off, but my attention kept drifting to my phone. I glanced out again. The figure was closer, just outside the light. I felt anxious. Maybe I was losing it after a tough few months. I focused on my friends, but their laughter felt distant, almost muffled. I stole another look outside. The figure was now at the edge of the light, watching me. Then my phone beeped one last time. "Jessica, why don't you come outside?" Fear paralyzed me. I turned and peered out, but the figure was gone. I could hardly breathe, my heart racing. I felt like I was being hunted, but there was no one there. Was I losing my mind? Did I imagine it all? I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The room spun around me, and my friends danced on, blissfully unaware. And then I saw it again, a shadow moving away from the building. I blinked, and it vanished into the night. I couldn't be sure if it was real. I never learned who sent those texts or what the figure wanted. I still think about that night. Was it just in my head? Or was someone really out there? The following day, I woke up with a heavy sense of dread. I didn't want to think about the figure or those chilling texts. My phone lay face down on the kitchen table, and I felt sick just looking at it. I ignored calls and messages, burying myself in the mundane tasks of daily life. As I prepared to head back to work, I tried to convince myself it was all in my imagination. Maybe it was a prank, or maybe I just needed sleep. Still, the memory of that figure lingered. It clung to me like a wet blanket, refusing to let go. Later that afternoon, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The crisp air felt refreshing. It was just what I needed. I roamed through the familiar streets, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling from last night. But the further I walked, the more the shadows seemed to stretch. I consciously avoided the area where I had seen the figure. Then I noticed something unfamiliar. A police car parked on the corner. Intrigued, I approached. A small crowd had gathered, murmuring amongst themselves. I overheard snippets of conversation, my heart pounding as I tried to make sense of it. Words like missing person and suspicious sightings floated to my ears. "What happened?" I asked a woman standing nearby. "A young woman is missing," she whispered back, her jaw clenched. "They say she was last seen near this area." My stomach dropped. I remembered the night, feeling more uneasy now. Was my mind playing tricks on me? I scanned the crowd, now scanning the streets, looking for something, anything, that would feel normal. The energy shifted as people exchanged worried glances. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. I caught a glimpse of someone out of the corner of my eye. A tall figure, clad in dark clothing, stood a short distance away, half shrouded in shadows. My heart raced as I stared, unable to tear my gaze away. Then it moved. Only a few steps, but it felt deliberate. My instincts kicked in, and I took a step back, torn between wanting to run and needing to know if I was imagining it all. I felt the eyes on me again. The police officer began to address the crowd, urging everyone to stay alert. "If anyone sees anything unusual, please call us immediately." As he spoke, the figure turned and walked away, back into the depths of the alley. I nearly shouted out, trying to catch my breath. Was that what I had seen last night? It didn't seem possible, yet the resemblance was uncanny. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run after it, but my legs were leaden. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. The texts from last night came flooding back. "You're not as safe as you think." The words echoed in my mind. That was when I saw it. A slip of paper on the ground where the figure had just stood. Heart racing, I bent down and picked it up. It was a simple note with one chilling sentence scrawled across it. "I see you." My breath caught in my throat. I glanced around, anxiety gripping me. The world felt suddenly heavy and dark. How had they known? Who was really watching? And just like that, I knew this was far from over. The note shook in my hands. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the whole world could see what was written on that scrap of paper. I quickly stuffed it into my pocket, not wanting anyone else to know what I had discovered. My heart thrummed loudly in my chest as I scanned the area, checking for anyone who might have been watching me. The police officer was still talking, but I couldn't focus on his words anymore. The mention of the missing woman played on repeat in my mind. What if she had seen the figure too? What if I was meant to see it? A wave of nausea washed over me. I turned away from the crowd, desperate to escape the weight of their concern. I needed to go home. I needed to feel safe, if only for a moment. I picked up my pace, my eyes flickering to the shadows of every alley I passed. They seemed to close in on me, thick and suffocating, threatening to snatch me away if I let my guard down. As soon as I unlocked my front door, I slammed it shut behind me, pressing my back against it. The familiar sounds of my home did little to ease the tension coiling in my stomach. I grabbed a glass of water and tried to steady my trembling hands. I needed to think clearly. With my phone still lying on the table, I finally summoned the courage to check it. There were dozens of notifications, friends, family, and missed calls. But one stood out, sending chills coursing through me. A message from an unknown number. "Thought you'd seen the last of me? Think again." I felt sick. The message felt like a punch to the gut. Who was this? My mind raced as I tried to process everything. I didn't have time to be afraid, but the fear consumed me. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend Sarah. I needed to talk to someone, to explain everything. "Hey, it's me," I said when she answered, trying to sound calm. "Can we meet up? I think something's really wrong." "What's going on?" Her cheerful tone faded into concern. "I can't explain it over the phone. Just, please." A pause filled the line. "Okay, I'll be at Joe's in 20 minutes. I hung up and took a deep breath. Joe's was just a short walk away, and I knew the route well. At least there, I would feel slightly safer surrounded by people. As I got ready to leave, a flash of movement caught my eye through the window. I peered outside, but nothing was there. I shook my head, thinking I was just imagining things. I couldn't afford to let fear run my life. I stepped out into the cool evening air, my resolve firm. I would talk to Sarah, figure this out. I would confront whatever was lurking in the shadows, starting with the messages. I could almost convince myself that I was prepared for the unknown. But then, as I turned the corner toward Joe's, I felt it again. A prickling sensation along my spine. I glanced over my shoulder and froze. There, at the end of the street, stood the figure once more. It was staring right at me. My heart raced as I picked up my pace, desperate to reach the safety of the bar. And just as I reached the door, I heard a familiar voice ring in my ear. "Don't run, I'll always find you." I stumbled, fear taking over as I swung the door open. Who was this person? Why were they doing this? The night had only just begun, and I was not ready for what was coming next. Inside Joe's, the chatter and laughter felt like a soothing balm, but provided no real protection. I scanned the crowd, hoping to spot Sarah's familiar blonde hair. I needed her, and soon. I knew I wouldn't be able to shake this feeling of dread alone. I took a seat at the bar, forcing myself to sip on water while my mind raced. The image of the figure lingered in my thoughts. Why did they keep appearing? Why did that comment feel so personal? My fingers brushed against the note I had shoved into my pocket. I needed to read it, to understand what it meant. With a swift glance around, I pulled it out and unfolded it discreetly. "In the shadows, truth lies. Look closer, and don't be scared." The words twisted in my stomach. Was I supposed to look for something? A clue? I glanced around the bar again, searching for anything that might connect to the note or that figure outside. But everything felt blurry and unimportant in comparison. Just then, I felt a tap on my shoulder and jerked around. Sarah stood there, her expression fluctuating between concern and confusion. "You okay?" I nodded, but I knew I didn't look fine. My palms were clammy, and I was breathing a little too quickly. "Let's get a table," I said, eager to put some space between myself and the bar. As we settled in, I rushed to explain, my words tumbling over each other. "I saw something earlier. There's a figure." And then I got a weird text. Sarah's face paled as she listened. "You think it's connected to the missing woman?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But it doesn't feel like a coincidence." She leaned forward, her voice lowered. "Have you thought about going to the police?" I shook my head. What would I even say? "By the way, I think someone's following me." "They'd think I'm paranoid." "Maybe you are," she said gently. "But I wouldn't take a chance. If something is happening, you should be careful." I felt my heart sink. I didn't need her to remind me. I was already teetering on edge. "What if they're watching me again?" I said, glancing around. As I turned, my breath caught in my throat. At the far end of the bar, I spotted a familiar face. It was him, the figure. But here, in the warmth of Joe's, he blended with the crowd, his dark clothing cloaked by the dim light. He was watching me, still and silent, as if he knew I had noticed him. "Who?" Sarah asked, following my panicked gaze. I swallowed hard. The figure slipped further into the shadows, but I knew that I couldn't just let this go. "The guy from before," I whispered. "He's here." Before I could react, the lights flickered. A sudden buzz of static filled the air. The bar went quiet as people turned, confusion spreading like wildfire. Then, everything went dark. Panic surged through me. I reached for Sarah's hand. The smell of alcohol and old wood hung in the air, but there was an ominous weight that pressed against my chest. "Stay close," I murmured, as we moved toward the exit, crushing fear clawing at my mind. Someone bumped into my shoulder as I shoved through the crowd, the chaos closing in around me. Just then, a voice floated into the darkness, smooth and chilling. "Did you really think you could escape me?" For a fleeting moment, my mind went blank as dread paralyzed me. Then, everything came rushing back, and I sprinted toward the door, certainty flooding my veins. I had to escape whatever nightmare was waiting for me outside. Outside, the cool night air slapped my face, shocking me back to reality. I scanned the street, my heart racing even faster than before. The bar's outdoor patio was empty, the dim lights casting long shadows against the brick walls. "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, her voice tremulous. I barely heard her. My eyes darted back to the entrance of Joe's, waiting for that figure to follow. "We need to get away from here." We hurried down the street, the chaotic hum of the bar fading behind us. I felt vulnerable, exposed. I hadn't seen the figure again, but the weight of that voice was heavy on my mind. "Did you hear what he said?" I whispered, trying to catch my breath. "Yeah, it was creepy," Sarah replied, sticking close to my side. "Do you think he—" "I don't know, but we need to do something. We can't just run." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, intending to call for help. But when I looked at the screen, I saw only a blank page, no signal. Great, I muttered. Just great. Let's go to my car, Sarah suggested. We can drive somewhere safe. I nodded, but dread filled me. What if the figure was already aware of our escape? If he was invisible in the shadows, what was he capable of? We reached the parking lot behind Joe's. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I spotted Sarah's car, a weathered sedan. It felt like a sanctuary, but as we stumbled closer, I noticed something alarming. Wait, I said, gripping her arm. Something's off. Her eyes widened as she glanced toward the vehicle. The driver's side door was ajar, swinging slightly as if someone had hurriedly exited. Who would leave it like that? My gut twisted. Let's check inside, I urged, slipping around to the passenger side. Peering into the window, my stomach dropped. The interior was a mess. Papers were strewn across the seats, the glove box left wide open. It looked like it had been ransacked. Maybe we should go back, Sarah said, her voice trembling. This isn't right. Just a second, I murmured, digging through the scattered papers. There was a receipt, an old grocery list, and then, at the bottom, a familiar piece of folded paper. I yanked it free, my heart racing. It was the same kind of note I had found in my pocket earlier. I opened it, my fingers trembling. In the shadows, truth lies. Look closer, and don't be scared. It was identical, but my mind was spinning. Who had been in Sarah's car? Why did they leave that note? Let's go, I said urgently, pocketing the paper. The darkness around us felt encroaching, as if it had eyes we couldn't see. Just then, a distant sound sliced through the night, a soft thud like footsteps. Someone was coming. I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her into the space between two parked cars, hiding. We crouched low, straining to see what was happening when a shadow passed by the opening in the lot. The figure didn't approach the car, but continued down the street, disappearing into the night. What do we do now? Sarah whispered, her voice small in the silence. What if he knows we're here? I replied, my pulse quickening. That's when I saw it, a glint of metal reflecting the dim light. Sarah! Look, the object lay on the ground beneath the car. A small knife. I felt a chill crawl up my spine as I stared at the knife. It glistened in the light, metal catching the fading glow from the nearby street lamp. Its blade appeared sharp, ready. It didn't belong to us, and the thought of who might have dropped it sent nausea swirling in my stomach. Should we touch it? Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a breath. No, we shouldn't be here at all, I replied, my mind racing. I glanced around, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows at any second. What if it's connected to whatever happened at the bar? She asked, her anxiety deepening the shadows on her face. I don't want to find out, I said as we both shifted, making sure we remained out of sight. I needed to think, but the panic was too loud in my ears. Suddenly, a metal clanging echoed from a few blocks away. I flinched, turning my head further into the shadows of the car. Could it be him? We have to go, I urged, grabbing Sarah by the arm. Just as I pulled her to her feet, my foot caught on something. I stumbled, leaning against the car to steady myself. What was that? She gasped, eyes wide with fear. Just my foot. I think, I murmured, my heart pounding. But then I noticed it. A small piece of paper sticking out from beneath the tire. It looked like another note. I quickly crouched down, pulling it out before Sarah could protest. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. There was a crude sketch of what seemed to be the outline of a building, with an arrow pointing to a circle. Below it, scratched in rough handwriting, were the words, "No one is safe." My stomach turned. What the hell is this? I muttered. My mind raced with questions. Who drew this? What did it mean? Is it more of that creepy stuff? Sarah asked, glancing at the note in my hand. Yeah, I replied. But before I could finish my thought, the distant sound of laughter erupted from the far end of the street. The cheer of nearby revelers, celebrating the new year, somehow felt surreal amidst the tension that surrounded us. Should we call the police? This feels really wrong, Sarah suggested, but I shook my head. No signal, remember? We need to get out of here first, I said, pocketing the note. I scanned the area again. Perhaps there was some escape route I had overlooked. "Let's head for the alley behind the bar," I whispered. "If we can cut through, we might get to the main street." Cautiously, we made our way towards the alley, keeping low and quiet. The sounds of laughter faded behind us as we approached the entrance. But as I peered into the dark corridor, a wave of dread washed over me. A figure stood at the other end, silhouetted against the dim light spilling from the street. My breath caught. It was him, the same figure I had seen earlier. "Run!" I shouted, instinct kicking in. As we turned to escape, I felt a cold grip on my shoulder. And everything went dark. When I came to, the cold concrete was pressing against my cheek. My heart raced as I blinked into the darkness. Where was I? I could barely make out the shapes around me. Panic tightened in my chest. "Sarah?" I croaked, my voice hoarse. I strained to hear anything, but the only sound was a distant hum of traffic and the echoes of laughter. "She's gone," a voice hissed from somewhere nearby. I shot to my feet, adrenaline flooding my system. "Who are you?" I demanded, squinting into the shadows. The figure stepped closer. It was a man, tall and lean. His face was hidden beneath a hoodie. "You're not supposed to be here." "What did you do to her?" I spat, panic boiling over. The image of Sarah's frightened face tugged at my memory. He chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. She was just in the way. I took a cautious step back, my mind racing. I needed to get out. "Why are you following us?" "Following you?" he echoed, a grin stretching across his shadowy face. "I'm not following anyone, kid. I just happen to be here. But this, you being here, is a problem." I felt that familiar chill creep back up my spine. The knife. The notes. I had to think. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Let's just say there are things you don't want to know." Then, without warning, he lunged toward me. I instinctively dodged, throwing myself against the wall. I needed to create distance. Instead, I stumbled backward and crashed into something hard. The noise echoed, and I froze. Another figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking my escape. I was cornered. "Tell me where she is," I shouted, frantically scanning for any chance to flee. "Calm yourself," the new figure said, maintaining a calm demeanor. He was smirking, as if this was a game, and I was losing. "You can't save her from this." "What's that supposed to mean?" I demanded, feeling the fear seep into my bones. "Let's just say New Year's brings out the worst of us," the first man said, inching closer. "She should have stayed away." My heart sank. It felt like they both knew something I didn't. Before I could think of an escape plan, something caught my eye. A glint in the dark, a reflection of light. That was when I noticed it. A knife, similar to the one we'd found earlier, resting on the ground between them. In that moment of realization, clarity hit me. "You're the ones behind the notes," I gasped. Their laughter rang through the alley, a chilling sound that echoed around me. I had to get out. I had to find Sarah. I lunged for the knife, grabbing it just as one of the figures reached for me. The blade felt cold against my palm. I was ready to fight. But then, everything shifted. A loud shout erupted from the entrance of the alley. "Police! Hands up!" I looked back, stunned. I hadn't even heard the sirens. In that split second, the two figures turned to escape, darting into the shadows. And when I called out for Sarah again, I felt the weight of fear crushing me. But I had the knife. I was no longer powerless. What did they mean? I whispered to myself, breathing heavily. And then everything darkened again as the shadows closed in. When my vision cleared, the alley was empty except for me. The sirens wailed in the distance, but I felt utterly alone. "Sarah!" I called again, my voice echoing off the grimy walls. I was still holding the knife, and the cold metal felt reassuring, but the menace that had just been there lingered in the air. With no time to lose, I scanned the alley for any sign of her. I had to get out of here. I pushed myself off the wall and bolted toward the alley's entrance. My heart pounded as I stepped into the street, looking left and right for any sign of Sarah. I spotted a police car parked nearby, its lights flashing. But I hesitated. Maybe it was safer to find her first. Moving quickly, I decided to head toward the nearby park. It was always packed with people at midnight, and she might have gone there. As I dashed down the street, my breath came out in ragged bursts. I couldn't shake the dread that filled me. What if those men had taken her? Or worse, what if that laugh I heard meant they had always known where she was? Arriving at the park, I scanned the sea of faces. Young couples were huddled together, laughter mingling with bursts of fireworks lighting up the night sky. But Sarah was nowhere in sight. Panic gripped me harder than before. I grabbed the nearest person, a young woman wearing a sparkly party hat. "Have you seen a girl? Medium height, brown hair, kind of frantic?" She was with me. She shook her head, confusion in her eyes. "Sorry, I haven't seen anyone like that." I thanked her and moved on. I was searching for something, anything, that could guide me to her. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned to see a figure darting between the trees in the distance. My heart skipped. Could it be her? "Sarah!" I shouted, sprinting toward the figure. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't Sarah at all. It was another person in a hoodie, blending into the shadows. "Stop!" I called out. "Who are you?" He stopped but didn't turn around. "You shouldn't be looking for her." His voice was low and steady. "Where is she?" I demanded, gripping the knife tighter. "Some things are better left alone," he said. Just then, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Something was off. I wasn't just afraid. I felt like I was being hunted. "You're with those guys, aren't you?" I accused. The figure turned slightly, revealing a cheeky smirk. "I'm just a messenger." He stepped forward, and that's when the glint of a blade caught my eye. Before I could react, there was a sudden noise. Gunshots rang out, and chaos erupted around me. People screamed and scattered in all directions, the night turning into a frenzy of fear. I ducked behind a tree, heart racing. I needed to find Sarah now more than ever, but the landscape of terror had changed. I didn't know who was shooting or why. All I knew was that I was in the eye of a storm, and the storm was closing in fast. Just then, I caught a glimpse of Sarah's face in the distance, visible through the panic. Relief washed over me for just a moment before dread returned. In that instant, I saw the man in the hoodie approaching her. "Sarah!" I shouted, taking off toward her one more time. But my voice was drowned by the chaos around us, and that's when I realized this was only the beginning. I pushed through the mass of bodies as fear clawed at my throat. The muffled cries and gunshots blurred together, each sound a reminder of my urgency. "Sarah!" I shouted again, my voice barely cutting through the panic. Suddenly the man in the hoodie turned. His gaze was locked on me, cold and unfazed by the chaos. He quickly slipped into the shadows, disappearing among the trees. I hesitated, torn between my need to find Sarah and the instinct to pursue him. But there was no time to think. Just as I spotted her again, I watched in horror as she stumbled backward, her eyes wide, looking right at the man who had approached her. I couldn't hear their words, but her body language screamed confusion and fear. "Get away from her!" I yelled, sprinting toward them, knife gleaming under the flickering lights. The man laughed, a sound that sent ice through my veins. "You really think you can protect her?" he taunted. "She's already in too deep." My blood boiled. "What do you mean? What do you want with her?" He stepped closer to Sarah, who stood frozen as if caught in a trance. "You've got one chance to walk away," he said, looking at me with amusement. "Things are about to get much worse if you don't." And just like that, he took a step back and disappeared into the shadows. I reached Sarah, grabbing her shoulders to steady her. "Are you okay?" I asked breathlessly, scanning her face for any sign of injury. I don't know," she stammered, her eyes darting around. "I thought I lost you. I don't understand what's happening." "Neither do I, but we can't stay here." I took her hand, feeling a surge of protective instinct. The gunshots had stopped, but the tension in the air held a heavy promise of danger. We turned to leave, but my instinct screamed that we weren't safe yet. I felt a presence behind us. Before I could react, a group of shadows emerged from the trees, surrounding us in a semicircle. My heart sank. Their leader, a tall figure with a scar across his face, stepped forward. "Nice of you to drop by," he said, grinning at me while ignoring Sarah. We've been waiting for you. What do you want? I demanded, raising the knife instinctively. He chuckled, his laughter echoing in the eerie silence that had fallen over the park. We want to introduce you to your new reality. Before I could question what he meant, a metallic clang sounded nearby. The group flinched, but quickly regained their composure. It was a flashbang, disorienting everyone. The world around me brightened and then darkened. When my vision cleared, I realized I was alone. Panic engulfed me. "Sarah!" I shouted, desperation in my voice. I took a breath and focused, recalling the last look on her face. It wouldn't end like this. I needed to find her, but I was suddenly aware that I was being hunted again. The night felt alive with unseen eyes watching my every move. I had to move. Before I could make a plan, a flash of white caught my attention from deeper in the park. I took a step forward, my heart racing with hope. Maybe it was her, but that was when I saw them, the outlines of the men in hoodies, moving as if they knew something I didn't. And they were heading straight for the glow, straight for Sarah. I stumbled into the park, my adrenaline cranked to the max. The air was thick with tension, a palpable barrier surrounding me. Fear coursed through my veins as I pushed through the chaotic crowd, desperate for Sarah. The distant lights painted flickering shadows, all of them twisting and shifting as if they were mocking me. "Sarah! Where are you?" I called, but my voice was drowned in the cacophony of panic. My heart felt like it was hammering in my chest, a frantic drummer urging me to keep moving. I had to find her. I had to reach her before those sinister shadows did. And then I saw it. A flash of white through the trees, just beyond the nearest cluster of revelers. My pulse picked up as I dashed toward it, every instinct screaming that I had to get there before it was too late. As I neared the glimmer, I caught sight of her. She was leaning against a tree, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. The familiar figure from before, the one whose words haunted me, stood too close. My heart sank as I saw the look of confusion mixed with fear on her face. "Get away from her!" I bellowed, the knife gripped tightly in my sweaty palm. The world seemed to pause as the figure turned toward me. I said... Before I could finish, he smirked. "You really shouldn't have come back." Something about his voice raised the hairs on my neck. Without a second thought, I charged forward. But as I reached the tree, he slipped away into the foliage with a smoothness that sent chills down my spine. "Sarah, are you all right?" I gripped her arms, scanning her for any signs of injury. Her skin felt clammy beneath my fingers, and her eyes darted back and forth as if searching for a way out. He just appeared. I didn't know what to do," she stammered, breathing heavily. "We have to go. Now!" I glanced around, but the darkness felt like it was closing in, the shadows lurking in the corners of my vision. Just as I turned to lead her away, I heard laughter. A low, mocking sound that echoed through the park. It came from the direction the figure had fled. "You're not getting out that easily," another voice called, and I felt my headache worsen. There were others, more figures cloaked in flickering shadows surrounding us. All at once, panic surged again, a wave of despair crashing against my sanity. How many were there? "Run!" I shouted, pulling Sarah close and racing back toward the path we had come from. My feet pounded against the pavement, the noise mingling with the distant echoes of celebration. For a moment I thought I could hear the sirens again, a haunting promise of safety that felt worlds away. But the laughter followed us, creeping closer. Each taunt echoed in my mind, reminding me they relished in this game of terror. As we neared the park entrance, a flash of movement caught my eye. A group of figures leaped from behind the trees, forcing us to change direction. "This way!" I yelled, steering Sarah toward a narrow alley that cut behind the park. As we darted inside, I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. The alley was dark, a stark contrast to the cacophony outside. "What now?" Sarah whispered, panic lacing her voice. "Just keep going," I urged, and we sprinted through the alley, praying it would lead us away from whatever had been hunting us. But then came the chilling sound, a voice from behind calling out, "You shouldn't have come here." Fear gripped me, and I risked a glance over my shoulder. The figure, the same figure. It was closer than I could have imagined. He was nearly on top of us, his silhouette accentuated by the dim light of a flickering bulb overhead. I turned to run again, but my foot slipped on an unseen object. Without a moment's warning, I fell, the knife slipping from my grip. I felt dizzy, the impact sending shockwaves through my body. "Get up!" Sarah screamed, but I could hardly think. As I scrambled, I panicked when I didn't see the knife. "The knife!" My voice cracked as I scrambled to my feet, searching frantically. "I have it!" A figure had emerged from the shadows. It was one of them, grinning as he held the knife up high, taunting us. "You're not cut out for this game." "No!" I shouted, but the figure let it fall, the knife clattering to the ground between us. Conflict surged within me, a mix of fear and anger. I had to get it back. I had to protect Sarah. Just as I lunged for the knife, the other figures appeared, blocking our escape. They moved with fluidity, surrounding us like wolves eyeing their prey. We were trapped. Words escaped my lips in frantic gasps. "What do you want?" "Let's just say you shouldn't have meddled with things beyond your comprehension," the leader said, stepping forward. His eyes gleamed with something dark, and I felt the ground beneath me start to tremble in unrest. "Run!" I yelled at Sarah as the figures closed in. But the alley suddenly constricted, a shroud of shadows enveloping us. The once familiar path now felt like a trap. I felt the hands of impending fear gripping me hard, but before we were consumed, an unexpected light burst through, the systematic blaring of sirens, reigniting hope. The figures flinched, their resolve flickering. "Fools!" one of them spat. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Finally, caught between darkness and sirens, I turned to Sarah, feeling the weight of the unknown settling over us. "We have to move," but then they vanished, as sudden as they had appeared. The sirens grew louder, but the shadows lingered, whispering hushed promises of something lurking within. We stumbled back toward the blaring lights, confusion wrapping around us like a shroud. What had just happened? Why had they disappeared? Just as we reached the street, a figure emerged from the darkness behind us, a man in a uniform. He rushed toward us, seriousness etched on his face. "Are you girls all right?" Before I could speak, I glanced back into the alley. There was nothing there. "Yeah," I replied, still trembling. We saw something." "Something?" He raised an eyebrow, but my words hung in the air, thick and unsaid. The truth was too complicated, too horrifying to put into words. As the chaos of flashing lights flooded around us and police officers began to secure the area, the shadows receded behind me, leaving questions that lingered heavy in the night air. "Did you see them?" I murmured, and Sarah shook her head, eyes wide. "We've got to go," she insisted. I turned to follow her, but I glanced back one last time, a prickle rising along my spine. Those shadows, they hadn't just vanished. And though we were in the light, I felt something in me shift, an unease that I couldn't shake. I couldn't stop thinking about those eyes, the laughter echoing in my mind. What had we stumbled into? What kind of night did we truly escape? I couldn't know for sure. But one thing was certain. I would never feel the same about darkness again.